In January 1979, the first bottle of cola was shipped from Hong Kong to Beijing. Coca-Cola, the world-famous magic water, officially entered the Chinese mainland market. China opened its gate to the rest of the world. A massive wave of Western culture poured in, and dubbed the films caught public attention.
你这个小傻瓜，不想活了。
Watching the films like Waterloo Bridge, Yesenia, and The Sound of Music with color in their hands was one of the most popular activities among young people back then. For coastal cities, Shenzhen, Xiamen, Zhuhai, and Shantou became China's first special economic zones and thus pioneers in opening up. These areas welcomed the foreign capital and technology and grew more and more integrated with the international market in all aspects. This phase of history was later written into a song, The Story of Spring. The 4 must-buy items for a married set of life in China were upgraded from radios, bicycles in the 1950s to black and white TVs, refrigerators, washing machines, and recorders in the 1980s. From the bottom of their hearts, Chinese people were delighted and inspired by the changes in life brought about by the reform and opening up policy. Words like the 4 Asian dragons were being mentioned more and more frequently on TV. Meanwhile, our neighbor Japan was becoming more and more attractive. It took 40 years for Japan, after its defeat in World War II, to become the world's second-largest economy after the US. Japanese brands made their mark in the life of Chinese people, and so did the Japanese culture in the form of famous actress Yamaguchi Momoe. Japan's colorful economic bubbles stimulated China. In 1990, Pudong district in Shanghai announced its reform and opening up, which immediately attracts world attention. The New York Times said this policy was a major signal of China's insistence on reform and opening up. This was the first report outside China about Pudong's development. Since then, the nascent new economic zone has captured attention from all over the world. In 1991, the Soviet Union became the Russian Federation, marking the collapse of the first socialist country, which made its fellow socialist country China fall into confusion. Soon after that, the 88-year-old Deng Xiaoping took a train to Shanghai. He encouraged the city not to miss this last chance to develop. Once again, the old man set off a wave of reform and opening up. The story of spring continued. From 1989 to 1991, China's GDP growth rate was about 5% per year, but it jumped to 14% in 1992. Since then, China kept its place as the fastest-growing economy in the world for years. In 2000, its GDP was about $1.08 trillion, achieving its goal of quadrupling. At the end of 20th century, China was full of joy, expectation, and pride. In 1997, Hong Kong returned. In 1999, Macau returned. The reunification clearly manifested China's growing overall national power. The story of spring also led to the upsurge of real estate industry. Developers bought land frantically, and construction sites could be seen everywhere. Those eager investors did not foresee an imminent inflation crisis and the financial turmoil that was to follow.
国际货币基金组织今天在东京召开作为主办国解决金融危机的国际会议。
The financial crisis that started in Thailand in 1997 quickly swept through the entire Asia. China, of course, suffered as well, with reduced export and DFI numbers, until eventually the economic growth began to slow down. This was the first regional financial crisis that China has encountered since the reform and opening up from 1978. It was obviously not foreseen by the five-year plan at that time. As China grows, reforms, and opens itself up even more rapidly, this will prove to be just the first of a series of challenges along the way.